Hi. So last week we just did an introduction, and I asked everybody to post a comment and introduce themselves on the discussion board. And I got some really interesting comments. One of the interesting things that you all seemed to gravitate around was the idea that you didn't like politics naturally. I can understand why that is, especially in an era of deep political polarization, where we tend to sort of vilify each other, where politics seems to be all about name-calling or getting even with the other side or thinking that they're terrible. And it can kind of put people off. Hopefully, one of the things we'll get at in political sociology is, first of all, that that's not really a good definition of politics. Politics is much broader than the narrow view of things that we often think of as political. But you can also start with this question of who benefits by having people like you or me become disinterested in politics. In other words, if we tune out of politics, or if we decide that we don't want to participate in politics, politics continues without us. Who benefits from that? Are there perhaps reasons why someone might want us to be disinterested in politics? The other thing that you could maybe ask yourself is, how could I transform politics? In other words, how can I change the way we do politics in our society? Or what can all of us together do to change that? Americans used to vote in higher numbers than they do today. That's something that we can empirically measure. We also will look at later on at the fact that Americans used to participate more in volunteer activities than we do today, something called social capital building. So how do we get back to that? So for many of you, I responded on the discussion board suggesting that what this course is really about is about how we can build community. Every group of people, if they're going to live together, whether it's a family or a country, has to develop some sort of mechanisms by which they interact with each other, by which we understand who's in charge, how do decisions get made. If you're out with your friends on a Friday night and you have to decide whether you're going to go out for pizza or for hamburgers, how do you decide? How do you come to a compromise about what you are going to do? In families, in my family, that's often very tricky. I have an 11-year-old son who has very different interests than my 4-year-old daughter. If we're going to do an activity together as a family, how do I balance these things out? How do I balance the time that I need, that my wife needs, with the time that my children need, and the different activities that they take part in? If I take one of them to a volleyball class, I'm not available to take the other one somewhere else. If I'm spending time with my children, I don't have time necessarily to spend with my wife, let alone with my friends, or with doing things that are maybe just my personal hobbies or interests. How do we balance all those things out within our household to make things fair? That's politics. That's how decisions get made. That's how the legitimacy of authority or power, or how the resources get distributed in a household, all of those things, that's politics. And so political sociology focuses on that bigger definition of politics, rather than just sort of the narrower view of politics that looks at the horse race of election times, or polling numbers, or the talking heads on television who are yelling at each other. It's people who may disagree, but fundamentally we're members of one family, one community, and so we have to learn how to live together. And so that's the sociology of politics that we're going to be exploring in this course. The week that's coming up, I want you to transition your focus now to some founding figures in sociology. Many of them, hopefully, you've come across before in your Sociology 101 or in some other courses you may have had. In addition to learning about figures like Karl Marx and Émile Durkheim and Max Weber, we're also going to read some of their works, at least excerpts of them. You maybe have never actually read the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto, interestingly, was simply a pamphlet written for factory workers in the 1800s. It's meant to be short, easy to understand, and to kind of explain Marx's general idea about how history works and his theory of society. Some of the other works are introductions to longer pieces or excerpts from longer pieces, but I wanted to give you a flavor of what these authors actually said in their own words that you could then use in your review test to think about how to put these authors in conversation with each other. What are the similarities and differences between them? How could we apply what they have said to the world we live in today, even though many of these figures were alive 200 years ago? So I look forward to your comments on the discussion board. You can also email me any questions you have. And I really want you to sort of wrestle with these figures. In addition to the 5 traditional figures in sociology that I use in my one-on-one classes, I'm also introducing you to Alexis de Tocqueville. Tocqueville's name appears on the title of the textbook for this class. Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman who was one of the first to really write about American democracy. He toured the United States in the 1830s. And to this day, in political science, especially in the study of American politics, but in the study of sociology and political sociology more broadly, Alexis de Tocqueville remains a central figure in what we know or how we think about democracy, and in particular, democracy in America. As you read Tocqueville, maybe ask yourself, is the kind of society that Tocqueville saw in the 1830s still around today? 200 years, almost 200 years later. What has changed? What has remained the same? What might Tocqueville think about the kind of society we live in today, the kind of social structures? And we'll come back to Tocqueville periodically throughout the semester, as we will with the other figures. Okay? So again, let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading and hearing your comments. Thank you.